Hi, we're here at King Superstore in Denver, Colorado. I always enjoy walking through a fully stocked bakery section. There's so many different things to see, so much variety, and so many different kinds of baked goods. There are exotic custom decorated cakes. There's pastry of every type imaginable. And literally hundreds of loaves of bread. Many of the different products that are sold here are made in one central bakery. Because the demand characteristics vary considerably, King Soopers has had to use 3 very different production processes. This video is about process choice. We're going to go to that central bakery and we're going to see what processes King Soopers has chosen, why they chose them, and what implications that has for the bakery. King Soopers makes all of their baked goods in this one large bakery in Denver, Colorado. They make high-volume breads, a wide variety of pastry items, and they make custom decorated cakes. To make all 3 types of products, King Soopers uses 3 very different production processes: a continuous flow process, a batch process, and a job shop process. All 3 of these are necessary because the products made in this bakery have widely varying volume and variety characteristics. To effectively and efficiently meet the demands of the marketplace, organizations typically try to match the process to the demand characteristics of the product. Let's see what that means for King Soopers. All of the products start as raw materials, and all of the bakery products have certain raw materials like flour, water, and sugar in common. The materials are brought into the warehouse in large quantities. From here they are distributed to the various lines in the bakery as they are needed. At each line, they're mixed together for the particular product. Of all the lines, the bread line is the highest volume line. At this bakery, bread is made using a continuous flow process. All the breads start in these mixers. The operator mixes the ingredients according to the details on a chart. Each product has its own chart that specifies ingredients and mixing times. Some of the raw materials are added by hand, and some are added through custom-made delivery systems. The mixing time varies according to the load and the product. When the dough is completely mixed, it's unloaded into a tub. The tub of fresh dough is then moved to the next stage of the line. Here the dough is loaded into special equipment that cuts and shapes it into the appropriately sized pieces. The dough, now in baking pans, travels on a proofing conveyor until it is loaded into the oven. The fully baked loaves of bread come out of the oven at the rate of over 7,000 loaves per hour. They then must spend about 60 minutes on a custom-designed cooling conveyor before they are ready for slicing and bagging. The bread is lifted off the cooling conveyor with special vacuum-operated equipment. Conveyors feed the loaves to dedicated slicing machines. Each loaf is then bagged, sealed, and loaded on a rack, ready for shipment to a store.
This is Steve Salter. Steve is the assistant plant manager at the King Soopers Bakery here. How you doing today, Steve?
Good, Jeff. Good to have you here today.
Good. Listen, do you make anything other than bread on this line?
Bread is the only item that we make on the line. It's a specialized type line.
Steve, what would be involved in changing the capacity of the bread line here?
Well, that'd be a major undertaking, Jeff, to change the capacity on the bread line. We'd have to expand the oven. We'd also have to add additional mixers to keep up with the production demand of 125 loaves per minute.
Okay.
Besides that, we'd have to change conveyors, packaging equipment, and be a major project to do the changeover.
Might require some plant expansion, certainly some relaying out of the facilities.
Exactly. There'd be more expansion in the plant and the facility to handle that type of thing.
What would like a new oven and a new mixer cost, do you think?
Just guessing, I would say in the neighborhood of $500,000.
Lots of money tied up in something like this.
Right, very expensive.
How about the role of people on this line, Steve?
Well, as you can tell, there's not very many people around to begin with. Because of the automation, we don't need quite as many people. The people here are basically trained to do a specific type of job to operate one of the pieces of equipment over here. So their skill level is somewhat limited to that piece of equipment.
Okay.
Once you start the bread line, you have to run it till it's empty, and that takes over 2 hours. The bread line is a continuous flow process. This line is capable of producing very high volumes of output. Only bread is made on this line. There is no flexibility in terms of the products that can be made. There is extensive automation, capital investment is very high, and labor is relatively low. Capacity changes can be made only with considerable difficulty and expense. Now let's look at the pastry line. The pastry line is a batch process. The dough is mixed in small batches, and there is considerable manual handling of the material. General purpose machines feed the dough onto the line. Right now, the line is making croissants. The pastry line produces a much smaller volume of each product than the bread line, and the material handling that was done there with automation is done here by people. pastry line uses many different specialized fixtures for the wide variety of products made on the line. A considerable amount of labor is involved in changing these fixtures from one product to the next.
Steve, what do we make here on the pastry line?
Jeff, we make a number of items here. We make a lot of small items, and yet we still make the larger items like the coffee cake. So we make anything from the size of a donut to a large coffee cake, which requires a lot of versatility on the machinery and the people here.
Okay, so to change between different pastry items, it oftentimes is just as simple as changing one of these fixtures back here, huh?
That's right. The line is set up so that as we change items, we just have to change the setup of the equipment by putting on different types of fixtures to make the different type of items.
Okay. The people here, they got to be more flexible than over on the bread line?
Most definitely. They need to have a little bit more skills to be able to do the different types of variety. They might be doing a turnover, as you see they're doing right now in the background. They're doing a turnover. Or a little later, they'll be doing a coffee cake. So it requires a different type of motion, a different type of skill.
Okay.
The size of each batch made on the pastry line varies with demand. The average is well under 1,000 units per batch. The equipment is relatively simple and inexpensive, and it doesn't take up much space. It would be fairly easy to expand a line or set up another one. In fact, there are two basically identical lines now running side by side. The pastry line is a batch process. The line can be stopped and started quite quickly. Only moderate volumes of each product are produced. A large variety of products can be made on the same line because fixtures are easily changed. There's some relatively simple and general purpose automation. The people on the line play a much larger role than in continuous flow. And expanding the line to increase capacity would be fairly simple. Now, while appearance is important for all items made in the bakery, it's the most important aspect of custom decorated cakes. The custom cake line is a job shop process. The process starts with the assembly of the basic cakes. Each cake is given a coating of the base frosting that is required for the particular decoration. The many different colored frostings for decoration are mixed in very small batches as needed. The special designs are all done by hand. There are no special fixtures other than a few holders and the frosting bags. The completed cakes are checked and boxed for delivery to the store where the customer placed the order.
Now, the custom cake decorating line is quite a bit different than the other places we've looked at. It seems like the people are more important here.
Well, the people here require more skills than anywhere else in the bakery. And you can see that fact, Jeff, by the fact of the number of months that we spend training those people. We spend 6 months training a decorator, where any other job in the plant would only spend 1 month of training.
Well, that's quite a big difference. If we wanted to change the capacity here, it wouldn't be very difficult to get another table and a couple of cake decorating nails or something like that.
Right. The key element in increasing capacity in this department would be to increase the number of people to decorate.
How many cakes do you normally decorate here a day, or how many does one person do?
I've seen the cake orders here as high as, during the graduation period, as high as 1,200 cakes per day, and I've seen it as low as 250 cakes a day.
The custom cake line is a job shop process. The line is capable of producing only small volumes of product. The final product can be highly customized. There's some general purpose equipment, but practically no automation. The people on the line are critical to its success. Expanding the line would be relatively simple, but could be constrained by the availability of skilled workers. The baked goods all come to this shipping dock where they are loaded into racks to be trucked to each store. There's a variety of breads. There's pastry items. And there's custom cakes. Racks with the products for each individual store are loaded onto trucks for delivery. To summarize the three processes of King Soopers, the continuous flow process is designed to create very high volumes of products. It cannot make customized products. Its flexibility is very low. It is highly automated with relatively little direct labor. And it is difficult and expensive to change capacities. The pastry line is a batch process. Batch processes typically produce moderate volumes. Rapid and easy fixture changes give moderate flexibility. There is much less automation than in continuous flow and more reliance on direct labor. Capacity can be increased with the addition of relatively inexpensive general-purpose equipment.